Welcome to episode 94 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live on October 26, 2018. This is a show about Office 365, Azure, and the IT Pro and end user side of life, where we discuss a topic or recent news related to Office 365 or Azure and how it relates to you as an IT Pro. In this episode, Scott and I finally quit releasing interviews from Microsoft Ignite, although we still do have some more coming, and record a new show. In this show, we talk about Microsoft Cloud certifications and some of the changes coming to the certification landscape. Let's dive in. Good morning, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing okay, but it's a very sad day. I'm down to my very last cup of cinnamon roll coffee.
Oh, I didn't get any of that.
I'm going to have to go and buy some more.
I thought you were going to say it's sad because it's like rainy and dreary in Florida today. It's like Seattle in Florida.
No, it's not. It might be raining at your place. Come over to mine. We're fine. It's sunny over here.
Yeah, it's raining here.
Yeah, it's sunny. Pool's open.
Oh, wow.
Got it all.
Yeah, our pool finally got too cold to swim in.
Yeah, well, that's a
sad day.
That's the joy of my HOA fees. They pay for the heater.
Pay for the heater. The air show's this weekend, though.
It is. The Blue Angels. Yay.
Yes, they buzzed our house 2 or 3 times yesterday.
Yeah.
Windows rattle.
Yep. It's always fun. I've been recording some courses, and you hear the rumble coming. You're like, well, I'm just going to lay off this slide and pause for a little while. The worst is when you're in the middle of like a 20-minute demo and you really can't just stop it. Like, well, we're going to listen to some airplanes on this one.
Yeah. No, it's fun. It's always a good time. I think we're going to actually head out and try to watch it either tomorrow or Saturday because they fly both days. And my sister-in-law teaches at a school that's right across the river from the runway. So they invited like teachers, and then if they want to bring some family along, to go sit out in the grassy fields right across the river from the runway.
Yeah, no, it's a good time if you haven't done it. And normally we go sit at my mother-in-law's house because she's got that nice patio that looks out over the river too. So we just look south and go ahead and take it in.
Get out on the boat and go out. I did that last year. I went out on a boat to watch it.
Yeah, that's true. Going out Saturday. So there's lots of options. But anyway, besides life, why don't we get into our topic for this week?
All right. Yeah, we're finally recording a topic. It's been a month since Ignite, and we've been doing Ignite episodes. So now we figured we'd actually talk to each other again.
Change it up like just a little bit and see if we can't talk about something different.
Yeah. So what are we talking about?
So we're going to talk about certifications and some of the changes that have been coming there. I've noticed not just locally, like we've had a bunch of the user groups and things that are starting to pivot a little bit into helping people get certified and kind of live through. But also it was one of the big takeaways from Ignite with the release of Microsoft Learning is just some of the things that are going on in this space. So I thought it'd be fun to talk about the Azure certs and what's changing over there and what's staying the same. And then we can talk a little bit about some of the Microsoft 365 stuff as well, which will encompass Office 365. So I think we can kind of get through a little bit of everything there.
Hi, I'm Steve Peshka, and I'm one of the founders at Office365mon.com. I worked at Microsoft for over 18 years, and one of the most common questions I got is, how do I know what's going on with the health of my Office 365 tenant? When there's a problem with your tenant, you need to know what's going on before your users. We help you understand not only when your tenant goes down, but how well it's performing. When you do have a problem, where do you start looking? Is it your network? Is it your tenant? Is it some feature inside of Office 365? Our network analysis features can pinpoint performance issues and help you figure out where those bottlenecks are. Sign up for a free 90-day trial today at Office365mon.com. Stay in the know and stay in control with Office365mon.com.
All right. So before we dive into the certs, I'm curious for your take. I'm going to try to catch you off guard because we hadn't talked about this before. Is just the value of certifications. I go back and forth on, do I take certifications? Do I not take certifications? Do people still look at certifications? What's your take on just certifications in general?
So I've always been kind of hit or miss on them, especially for Microsoft certifications, where you've been able to do things like maybe, go buy a brain dump or something like that, or just read a book and pass a test without having the actual skill. So I don't tend to look at certifications from the lens of, oh, you're certified, so that means you can do all of these things. I tend to look at certifications from the perspective of, oh, you're certified, so we can talk about the same things. So when I say something technical or a technical term that's involved with platform X, Y, or Z, and you're certified in that technology and I am too, then we're talking about the same thing. Like there shouldn't be any ambiguity there. It doesn't mean you know how to do it. And that's okay. But at least, we're working from the same dictionary and we're same lexicon, and we can go ahead and get things to where they need to be that way.
You at least know that they know about the space you're discussing. They're not completely brand new to the space.
Yeah. And it really depends on what you're certified in, right? So like I said, I'm a little down on Microsoft certs personally, just because over the years, it has been really easy to take brain dumps and figure some of that stuff out. And when we talk about some of the Microsoft certifications today, Microsoft is actually changing some of this. Like I went and took one of the new tests recently for Azure, and it had a hands-on lab in it where you actually had to go into the Azure portal and they gave you a series of unguided exercises. Accomplish this task, secure this service in this way, make sure that these two networks are connected and that traffic can pass in these ways. And you had to know how to do that stuff to get it done. And you're not going to learn that from a book, which I thought was really good. Now we're getting to a space where not only do you have to understand the language, but you also have to be able to do it to a certain degree to pass the test. I thought that was all really great. And that's just Microsoft certs. Like there's certs for all sorts of other things, right? You can go and get a VMware certification. You can get a Cisco certification. You can get CompTIA certified, CNA, things like that. So I just want to be clear, like I'm kind of talking about Microsoft certifications and the things that go on there and where some of their value is.
Yeah. And I'm in the same boat. I've always done the Microsoft certifications. I haven't gone much outside of that, but I've felt much the same way. Like there's certifications I've passed before that I'm like, I actually knew nothing about that. I knew just enough that I could deduce certain answers. Maybe I read some stuff in a book, but like you said, you know that they know the space, but they don't necessarily know how to do that. That's really cool. I like that they're starting to actually tie some of that stuff in where you were talking about in Azure, where you actually have to go configure it or do something. So hopefully they'll keep going with that across some of their other certifications.
It was really cool. So I was actually, just to kind of give people a sense for it. So, you're taking this test and you're doing the next thing and your multiple choice questions and case studies. And when it came to doing the hands-on lab, you're in a different portion of the test, so you can't go back to the previous section. But I had actually realized in the hands-on lab, they asked me to do something. I was like, dang it. I got that other thing earlier a little bit wrong. Because you can't always remember, like picture in the portal what's going on. But, when you have the portal or you got Cloud Shell or PowerShell or something up in front of you, it just kind of comes back to you in the moment. You go like, oh yeah, I know how to do that.
Right.
And figure it out. So it's really interesting. One of the other things with value too, that I'll just throw out there, and kind of help frame some of this conversation as we talk about it. When Microsoft got ready to revamp certs and think about new ways to have people come in and understand the technologies they're going to teach them, they actually went out and commissioned a study with IDC. And they went out and talked to a bunch of organizations about cloud skills and organizational influence of cloud skills within them. So think, we go out and we talk to CIOs and CTOs about, do you have a cloud strategy? What is your strategy? Is it literally go to the cloud written on a napkin, or is it something more concrete? And how do you plan to get there, and what's that going to look like? So for everybody that they went out and talked to, more than 70% of kind of CIOs and CTOs said they plan to have a cloud first strategy. So I think that speaks to the value of saying, hey, let's be certified in the cloud, whether it's Azure or Office 365 or AWS or something like that. But more interestingly was almost 85% of those enterprises also said that they'll have some type of cloud infrastructure. So if you take those two numbers, you think like, and that's pretty high, right? That's a good saturation to say we're going to have 85% of the organization with some kind of cloud infrastructure. And they took those same group of users, CIOs, CTOs, and everybody that they had surveyed, and they asked them, where do you see skills within your organization? And when they went back to those same orgs, only about 16% of them actually said they have the skills to get there. So that's absolutely crazy if you think about it, where they're saying, we have a cloud first strategy. Our goal is to be cloud first and have constructs in the cloud, and we can't actually get there. There's a little bit of like rubber needs to meet the road. So if you're somebody who's sitting down and you've had a certification in the past, or you're thinking about a renewal, or you're getting ready to go, whether it's a Microsoft one or a AWS cert or whatever it happens to be, I think there's a huge opportunity in saying, I'm going to be certified in something in the cloud, not only to be able to speak the language, but to actually go and help organizations implement it and figure out what that is, whether that's your organization today, or you're looking for a new job, or you're a consultant, no matter where you sit, I think there's a really awesome opportunity to get out there and figure out what value you're going to provide to your day-to-day job and the organizations you work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing that even with some of my clients where they have been typical on-prem, again, SharePoint, Exchange, more of the modern desktop area. And we're having those same conversations of, hey, we want to go to the cloud, but we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what the best path is to get there, how everything all fits together. So I'm seeing that more than I feel like I used to even maybe 6 or 9 months ago.
Yeah, it's a great thing to see, and it is a nice shift. So I think the takeaway there is there's going to be lots of people to help. Again, whether it's an organization you're with today, or you're looking for a new job or new role or whatever it happens to be. And there's going to be a lot of stuff to do for not only the near future, but also probably looking out a little farther as well. It's not like something that you're going to get into and then it's going to be gone in a year or two. It's just going to keep iterating and changing and growing and becoming more and more for you. So when you think about that, like just keep that in the back of your head, right? It is a great opportunity, regardless of, where you sit or anything like that.
Yeah. So now that we've diverged a little bit from, hey, certifications are changing, back into the certifications with all that said, and kind of some of these benefits that are still there behind certifications, and some of the changes coming to Azure, to the Azure certifications, to Microsoft 365, Office 365, and those certifications. Let's dive into these new Azure certifications. What's that evolution right now in the certification landscape of Azure?
Yeah, so we'll kind of talk about both sides. So we'll talk about Azure and Microsoft 365, and Microsoft 365 will be inclusive of Office 365. So on the Azure side, they've announced 4 new certifications that are role-based and not necessarily technology-based. So there's an Azure Administrator certification, there's an Azure Developer certification, Azure Solutions Architect, and there's also going to be an Azure DevOps Engineer certification. So there's 4 new ones on the Azure side. And on the Microsoft 365 side, there's going to be a Microsoft 365 Enterprise Administrator certification, and there's going to be a Modern Desktop Administrator certification. So 2 on that side. And if you hear those and you're like, wow, there's only 6 and that's all there's going to be. No, that's not the case. These are the 6 that have been announced, and some of them have training available and are ready to go and are released or in beta form today. The goal from the Microsoft side is to certainly release more of these as they start to align more roles and figure out how that's all going to come together. So what Microsoft has done on their side is they have an internal process that they call job task analysis, or JTA. And what they do is they go out and, they work with external organizations, external subject matter experts, learning partners, whatever it happens to be. And they use that data to create a master list of skills based on a persona or a role, and then generate learning paths around that. So the actual things that you're going to have to learn to be successful in that role. And then, they go and figure out, hey, do we do like micro learning, like CBTs? Do we do instructor-led training? Do we have people write books about this? And then what certification or exam does that lead into? So when we get into these and we talk about some of these certifications, keep in mind that things like an Azure Administrator Associate, they have very specific personas that are mapped to them. So it's not just, I'm an administrator, and what does that mean? You're actually going to have a really clear understanding of what Microsoft views an Azure Administrator to be, and not just what Microsoft views it to be, but what a wider community views it to be as well. So just keep that in the back of your head for everybody listening as we're going through this. So what happens with the Azure certs is there's 3 levels of certs. So there's fundamentals, associates, and experts. So fundamentals is going to be an Azure fundamentals certification, which is going to be optional. They don't have that certification out there yet, but they know they want to do it. At the associate level, you're going to have the administrator and developer that I mentioned. And then at the expert level, you're going to have that solutions architect and DevOps engineer. And what Microsoft has done is they've changed it a little bit. So in the past, you might want to go out and do like the 533 and the 535, and then get yourself up to that MCSA. And you would have to have, a 533 before you could do a 535, and depending on what was going on and how you were sitting for things and where it made sense for you to be. But to be something like a certified solution architect, you had to know all this technology and all these other things, and maybe not so much of the design that you might focus on in something like solution architecture. So they've broken that up a little bit. So we like fundamentals. You don't have to take fundamentals to sit for an associate exam. And you don't have to take fundamentals to sit for an expert exam. You don't even have to take an associate exam to sit for an expert exam like the solutions architect exam. So this is actually a really good thing because, again, we're aligning 2 roles. So Microsoft has recognized that not every solution architect is actually going to be an IT pro and a developer at the level that people who are going to be administering systems day to day are, right? They need to know different things. They need to still understand the technology, but just at a different level and in a different way. So Microsoft's gone and kind of done a bunch of realignment there to figure out how to get people over the fence. If you have a certification today, particularly for the Azure stuff, so you have a 533, a 532, or a 535, don't worry about it. You can go ahead and just take a transition exam. So you don't need to take a bunch of exams to get back into these. And transition exams are available right now for all of these. So if you have a 533, that's going to map over to the new 100 certs, which are Azure Administrator. 532 is going to map to 200s, which are Azure Developer. And 535 will map to the 300s, which is Solutions Architect. So you can go and just sit for a transition exam if you're ready to do that. Those are going to be available through June next year. So you just go ahead and take the transition exam, and then you're up to whatever level. So if I had the 533 today, I go and sit for the AZ 102. Past that, now I'm an Azure Administrator, certified Azure Administrator Associate, and ready to go.
When it comes to email, Outlook and Office 365 are fantastic, but sometimes there are things you'd like to do that aren't implemented. Sperry Software creates Outlook add-ins and Office 365 services that fill in these gaps. For instance, there are Outlook add-ins to automatically print emails and/or attachments, save emails to PDF, send out recurring emails, or how about a warning when you're going to do a reply to all instead of a normal reply? Find these and many more email productivity solutions. Get started today by visiting www.sperrysoftware.com/cloudit. So if you're not doing these transition exams, so if you don't have the 533, so you're not going to do the transition, is it multiple tests then to get to some of these certifications? Because we had the 4 certifications that you had mentioned. Are those all multiple tests, or are those each one test? How does that align to the test? Because typically you think like 533 is just a test.
Right. So it does align to 2 tests for each of these. So for the AZ100, which would be the equivalent of the 533 in the past, now there's 2 tests there. So there's an AZ100 and there's an AZ101. You pass the 100 and the 101, and you are an Azure Administrator Certified Associate. Same thing for the developer exams. There's a 200 and a 201. And then for the architect, there's a 300 and a 301. And the thought process here is we want to give everyone the opportunity to not only take a brain dump and pass a test, but actually know the technologies. So when we look at something like certification for an Azure administrator, in the past, you might have just done a big dump on kind of core networking, and you might have learned how to provision identity and maybe do some subscription management and storage and things like that. But you didn't spend a ton of time on things beyond core, where you got into really advanced networking or actual scenarios for doing migrations, right? We learned how to stand everything up, but we didn't always learn how to consume it and use it. So what happens there is for each of these certifications, there's 2 exams, like I said, and those 2 exams split into different learning paths. So a learning path is composed of courses, and then those courses are made up of individual modules. So it's always modules roll up to courses, roll up to learning paths. When you go back and try and figure out which one you're going to take and what you're going to learn. So if we look at something like Azure Administrator, the 100 is all about subscription management, storage, managing virtual machines, managing virtual networks, and managing identities. It's really about management, right? Let's go ahead and manage Azure infrastructure. So cool, we've passed that. We've got the AZ100. And then you think about the other side. Okay, now I know how to manage and configure infrastructure. Well, what do I do with it once it's there? Well, we continue to build on top of it. So for the AZ101, the learning path is advanced networking, securing identity. So, we've gone beyond just plain vanilla Azure AD, and let's think about things like MFA and PIM and constructs like that. And then let's learn how to migrate virtual machines in and learn about kind of lift and shift scenarios and how to bring things over. And then let's focus on PaaS a little bit there too. So we'll still learn about things like Azure App Service and Azure SQL and driving people into workloads there, because those are typically services that you're going to see maybe as part of a migration or some form of a transformation or projects like that within your organization. So that's kind of the administrator side. Developer breaks down in the same way. Again, we split into 2 exams. So for the AZ200, it's going to focus on cloud technology selection, storage, what are the solutions that are out there, and then securing those solutions as you develop them. And then the 201 focuses more on actual development. So now that we know what all the services are, now we can develop on top of them. How can we integrate services together? And also looks at developing for artificial intelligence, machine learning, and IoT. So getting into kind of intelligent edge and things like that as its own separate pillar to carry things forward. So you pass those 2 exams, you're a certified developer. And then architect is a little bit of a weird one. I don't want to say it's all over the place, but it's all over the place just because of the expectations of what you might need to understand as an architect. So when we think about architecture, there's going to be 2 paths there as well. So the way they've treated architecture, where like administrator and developer they're both technical paths. In the architect exams. There's a technologies exam, and then there's a design exam. So we want to think about the technologies that we'll consume organizationally and within our workloads and our applications. And then we want to think about how to design holistic solutions around the technologies that are available to us in the cloud. So on the first path, it's all about infrastructure, workloads and security, technology solutions, how to deploy applications, secure your data, and develop for the cloud. So if that sounds like a lot, it is. When I talk about things like develop for the cloud, that is going to be focusing on things like Azure Service Fabric and understanding what reliable actors are and how Service Fabric clusters perform and how to do deployments to them with containers and app services and understanding all the things that go into that. And not only how to do the deployment, but also how to secure the deployment. So understanding how Azure AD works as an STS, understanding how to secure certificates in Azure Key Vault, understanding how TLS works. So it's definitely technical, right? And it dives into all those things. It also covers containers with things like Azure Kubernetes. And that's on top of learning how to configure infrastructure. So you still need to know the GUI, the warm GUI center of how to configure VNets and address spaces and tie things together, because those are part of your planning as an architect. Like, you need to be able to understand how all of this stuff is going to tie together in a holistic ecosystem. So
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the notes for this, and it is like, when you configure infrastructure is 1 point out of 9 of them.
Yep.
It's like configure infrastructure is not a small topic in Azure or a small skill set in Azure.
No, I mean, to give you a sense and to give everybody a sense. So, I work for a training company, right? We go out and do instructor-led training and things like that. When we do certification classes and we think about teaching somebody, whether it's the 533 today or the AZ 100 that it's mapped over to, like when I go out to a customer and I deliver that, we spend on the order of at least a day and a half, if not 2 days of a 5-day class, talking just about virtual machines. Just virtual machines. We haven't even talked about networking or storage or anything else yet. So there's a lot that goes into each one of these. And I think that speaks again to, you're not going to be able to just take brain dumps anymore to pass these tests, because there's no way that even if you buy a 5-day class from somebody, we'll get you as far as we can. And you'll certainly be far more prepared than you were if you hadn't gone through it. But you're going to have to spend a bunch of time on your own as hands-on learning and delivery and doing some of this stuff day to day.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it goes all over the place. So like I said, 2 paths for that one. You've got a technologies exam, and then there's a design exam for that one as well, which goes into covering identity and security. So where in something like an AZ 101 exam, securing an identity, you might focus just on MFA and maybe doing like access reviews or things like that, right? A little bit kind of lower level. On the other side, you'll get a lot more into identity reporting. You'll start thinking about things like privileged identity management. You'll need to understand conditional access. So to give you a sense for kind of how deep it goes, if you get into things like conditional access, you actually need to know all of the conditions and all of the grants for a conditional access policy and be able to put them together in order to think about being able to pass some of these exams and get through them. Like, there will be questions on the exams that say, hey, here's a scenario and you've got, these 8 choices, and it's going to be a mix of conditions and grants, and you've got to drag them all into the right order and figure out where they need to be and what they need to look like. And if you haven't done that before, and if all you've done is read about it, that's where I come back and say, like, good luck, right? If you've got a photographic memory and you can go ahead and do that, more power to you. But for the most part, you're going to have actually had to run through these scenarios and understand what they are. So there's really kind of wide breadth and wide width to the 300 exams. But you don't, again, have to sit for other exams before that. You can just dive right in at this level. Like, if your job is to be an architect, let's teach you to be an architect. So let's teach you the technologies you need to know to be successful in that role. And then let's teach you how to design around those technologies. So we'll teach you all about strategy, deployments, migrations, integrations, all those kinds of things. Some will go pretty deep. They just won't go as deep or touch all the areas that the developer or administrator exams will.
Mover is a cloud migration company that specializes in moving your company's files from file servers or cloud storage like Box, Dropbox, and Google into Office 365. Their patented technology makes Mover the fastest OneDrive file migrator in the world. Moving dozens of terabytes of data a day is a breeze. Use Mover's free, industry-leading migration guides, or ask for a managed migration and they'll take the lead. With Mover, all your data is secure and intact. Running completely behind the scenes, you don't lose time, money, or hair while you transfer. Scan, plan, migrate, report. Migrations that don't suck with Mover. Visit mover.io for more info. Okay, nice. I'm liking how this is all shaping up with the new exams.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. So let's cover the other side as well and talk about Microsoft 365 really quick. So there's fundamentals, associates, and experts in Azure. On Microsoft 365, they've only defined associates and experts so far. So they've got an associate exam, which is going to be desktop administrator. And then they've got the expert exam, which is going to be enterprise administrator expert. So if you think about diving in and being an enterprise administrator for Microsoft 365, that's going to be all the Office 365 stuff. Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, all that kind of stuff that you would have had to know in the 346 and 347. And then let's go ahead and add some other stuff on top of that, like thinking about Windows as a service. And you've still got to know DNS, Active Directory, PowerShell, all those things that come together. So there's going to be 2 exams for the administrator expert as well. There's going to be the MS 100, which is Microsoft 365 Identity and Services. And then there's going to be the MS 101, which is Microsoft 365 Mobility and Security. So the 100 is tenant and service management. So understanding the difference between tenants, subscriptions, where Azure AD sits, where Office 365 sits, how all that stuff comes together. How to do service management. So Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, Skype for Business, Teams, groups, all these different workloads.
You forgot Yammer.
No, I didn't forget anything. There's identity management. So you're absolutely going to have to know Azure AD. There's no way around that. And, hopefully everybody knows that at this point. But if not, there's no way around it. You have to know Azure AD. And a lot of those things that I talked about for the Azure exams, you're going to have to know the same kinds of things for these exams as well. So don't be surprised if you go out and buy a book about Microsoft 365 training and it's all about Azure, because it's one of the core constructs that's available to you. You're going to have to know PIM. You're going to have to know MFA. You're going to have to know conditional access and all these different things. Like there's a lot of bleed in services there. And then you're also going to have to know overall 365 management. So that's going to be managing security, configuration of these workloads, how all that stuff comes together. The 101 splits out to device management, security management, and compliance management. So device management is going to be Intune and Office 365 MDM, which again is going to touch on conditional access. Security.
Okay, is this?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to jump back. Is that where they tie in some of the Windows 10 stuff? Like, is there going to be autopilot stuff on there?
There is. So
the Windows threat protection, all of those Windows 10. I'll say the Windows 10 features you get when you have it as a part of a Microsoft 365 subscription. Yeah,
you're going to have to know about desktop as a service and delivery through there. So, and it's good to call out, right? It is Microsoft 365. This is not purely Office 365. So yes, there are going to be device components in there for both MDM, MDR, understanding how to roll out Intune, and then understanding how to do autopilot and ATP and some of the other services you talked about, which bleed over there. You'll also need to know security management, and you'll need to know compliance as well. So that's going to be another Azure thing, right? We need to know about Azure information protection, Azure rights management, how those all come together from both a licensing, a deployment, and a technical technology lens within Microsoft 365. So it's going to be decent set of content to get you ramped up and understand where you need to be. And once again, you're going to need to be hands-on with those things to really have a good sense for where they are.
That's a lot of information. I remember even looking back at just when it was Office 365 certifications, and there's a lot of stuff just in Office 365. You start throwing EMS and Windows 10 in there too. It's a lot.
There is, but keep in mind, this is the expert level certification we're talking about. So there's an expectation at the expert level that you've got it, right? Like
right.
there
You're
are
doing
things
it on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
You're familiar with all the stuff.
I'll go back to you're not just doing the brain dump and running things through. So
is there a transition exam? I didn't see anything in here about transition exams for 365.
There's nothing that's been announced, and I haven't heard about anything that's on the roadmap there. So it looks like most of the M365 stuff will just be all up brand new.
I'm going to have to go redo it at some point in time.
At some point.
When I have free time. Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, so that's certification stuff. Nice and easy.
All right. Sounds good. Exactly. It's nice and clear now. No, it will be good because I know Microsoft, some of the exams too, people have laughed at it for a while because you could do so many brain dumps and you could really pass them just off a brain dump. So I think it's really good that they're making some of these more challenging, starting to separate them out to even the various levels of expertise. So I think this is a good move on their part.
Yeah. I think that's about it. I don't think there's too much else to cover there. I know I told you it was going to be like 15 minutes and we've gone over that.
Yeah, well, we started talking about Blue Angels and stuff too. So yeah, no, it was good. Thanks. I appreciate the insight because I have not had time to look at new certification stuff lately.
Well, I've been putting together a bunch of material and sitting for the exam, so always fun.
Yes. All right. Well, I'll let you go get back to the rest of your day, and hopefully we'll try to start recording episodes again, sprinkle in the remaining Ignite episodes we have, and get back to our regular schedule of sitting down and chatting, because there's even been more news that's come out since Ignite. There's more stuff coming, so we have lots we can keep talking about.
Perfect. Thanks, Ben.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Talk to you later. If you enjoyed the podcast, go leave us a 5-star rating in iTunes. It helps to get the word out so more IT pros can learn about Office 365 and Azure. If you have any questions you want us to address on the show or feedback about the show, feel free to reach out via our website, Twitter, or Facebook. Thanks again for listening and have a great day.